Hello, so I thought I'd make a nature connected neighbourhoods video just showing you our garden where it all really started, and just giving you a bit of a tour really. So the approach has been a sort of mix of almost rewilding principles and planting. So it's very much a garden, and we've learned from experience. So really this is nature led, and we've been just really been learning the lessons from the sort of plants and nature in the garden. So we have some red campion here in pots, and some further back in the lawn. These are oxeye daisies, they're just not quite in bloom just yet. Lots of green alkanet, which we didn't plant, that's self-seeded. And yeah, it's very much a living space. We definitely do use the garden, sort of kids, dog. So yeah, I've got various plants in pots, and I think this really does demonstrate. I mean, some of these pots are absolutely packed with all sorts of different plants. Some of them, I think, sort of tends to be one plant quite dominant, but it really just demonstrates how much you can actually achieve even with only a window box or a balcony. So we've got lots of features here which are really suitable for a small patio or a windowsill, or as I say, a balcony. It's a bit of rhubarb there. Just moving on, so we've got the goat willow here, which is a wonderful early source of food for pollinators. And then just down here we have the assorted, these come with me to fairs, bog bowls, and a pond bowl there. So these are all washing up bowls, so you can repurpose a container and plant it up with sort of either plants that like a relatively wet environment, not necessarily to be sat in standing water, but certainly the pond plants will cope obviously with being sat in standing water, but depending on the choice of bog plants, they may or may not tolerate being sort of in a more pondy environment. The holly here in flower, so the bees have been loving that, and the holly blue butterflies as well. So just show you close up in case lots of people talk about not having ever noticed the holly flowers. So yeah, those are in bloom at the moment. What else can I show you? Lots of dandelions obviously in the grass, longer grass, so we're in no mow May at the moment. We will basically we don't have a lawnmower anymore. It packed up after we hadn't used it for more than 2 years. So yeah, that's we do a tiny bit of cutting in certain places by hand. So this is the herb area, so you can see there's some chives, some thyme in there, some mint, rocket, wild rocket. The willow arbour that we made, a sort of living willow, unfortunately is not done terribly well with last year's droughts. There's a privet at the back here, so lots of different things going on at lots of different levels. More oxeye daisy, there's some hedge bed straw at the back there, there's some feverfew, some yarrow about to come into bloom over there, knapweed, there's some verbena, I think there's some viper's bug loss as well, and just lots of this lilac tree, absolutely loved by the birds, and some bee hotels and bits on there. There's some teasel. I'm going to struggle to remember all these. So there's common corn cockle on a sort of beetle bank just in the back there. So and then there's actually a hibernacular, so a place where frogs and toads can take refuge. Might be able to show you that. Just step over. There's some bird's foot trefoil as well that hasn't come out. You probably can't see actually because it's so there's a little hole on either side for them to get in and out somewhere here. I probably can't find that right at the moment. but yeah, take my word for it. Some raspberry canes, which really just look after themselves. They're really, if you want to grow your own food, they are so easy. Lots of plantains, some water mint. So there's a little pond over here. I've been enjoying the green alkanet. Some ragged robin. Yeah, so there's some water mint, some marsh marigold. We've got some rushes, and yeah, sort of more of the kind of bog type plants. It really has just grown in the last few days, actually. We've got some lupin just down here, and some sweet William pear tree with one little pear at the moment. It's quite a young pear tree. And damson at the back there. And we've got wallflowers as well. So there's lots going on here, lots of bees taking a lot of interest. Oh, the lovely pulmonaria, that's a lungwort. Yeah, that does really well. The clover as well, later in the season, that will be covered in bees and other pollinators. And yeah, so lots of different bits of interest going through the year. So yeah, yarrow here. There's some foxglove, there's some scabious just there. And there's some wilder areas. We've got a sort of compost heap going on here, which is, yeah, again, full of life. An apple tree, which is sort of has just been in blossom. We're moving on. There were daffodils all through here. There's some snowberry that we're really trying to reduce or eliminate if we can, because yeah, it's a little bit invasive. So that was here before we moved in. See, it's lovely tree. This is our kind of woodland area. So we've got the Spanish bluebells, unfortunately, that were here when we moved in, but some native bluebells. All sorts of things going on here, actually. We've got some wild garlic at the back there, a dead hedge, and then some sort of planted hedging to kind of grow in. So there's some beech and hawthorn, there's a bit of honeysuckle, there's some red currant or white currant, and a damson that's just taken over for on its own, and some pyracanthus. There's an alder at the back there. So yeah, lots going on. Lots more of this green alkanet. There's some wood arvens. The herb Robert. That's lots of that all over the place. So there's elements here which have kind of introduced themselves, and we've just kind of nudging and shaping. But you can see there's lots more density here of species than if we'd planted them all. So there's lots more biodiversity. There's just tons of activity going on down at that sort of ground level in the vegetation. And there's one of our hoverfly lagoons just there as well. So yeah, lots of activity here. So yeah, some ferns and hawthorn. And yeah, so you can see it's all quite wild. The swing, unfortunately, has been outgrown, so not used. So I've just let the plants take over there. And then further back we have some stitchwort and wild strawberries, primrose, more bluebells and ramsons, and some lesser celandine as well. So lots of bits and pieces going there. And just in here we have some logs and dead wood. So around the garden there are sort of various bits of dead wood. Obviously also the compost bins that have plenty of biodiversity in those as well. Lots of ivy, so lots of ivy around the apple tree. So this provides a really lovely dense cover for the birds. Blackbird loves this tree. But we'll find long-tailed tits and so on. It's a little bit hard to tell very often if anyone's actually nesting in there, but it makes ideal cover. And we have the berries for the birds and the flowers for the sort of ivy bees and sort of other bees as well. And the beauty with ivy is that's providing very, very late, sort of wintry almost, food for pollinators. So quite an important, very important plant for lots of different reasons. onto. We get lots of songbirds. We have sort of various woodpeckers and all sorts of different garden birds. We had some goldcrest in the winter. We quite often have goldfinches come and take the seeds from the dandelions. Who else do we have? Blackbird, song thrush, long-tailed tits. We had redwing. We have had blackcaps, wrens, obviously, robins, blue tits, great tits, the occasional coal tit. All sorts of birds visiting the garden, which is lovely. We did at one point have a juvenile sparrowhawk as well, actually in the garden. So in the front garden, I do tend to just let these. I mean, this is an absolute pocket. I mean, this is just literally a tiny gap along the patio, but just look at all these different species, and it's not in any way in the way. There's some snapdragon there. It's not in any way creating an issue. So we just let it grow, and obviously when it's damper, there's moss as well. And then over to our front garden pond. And so there's the pond itself. I think we may have newts this year. Hoverflies love this pond. So it's and we very often see butterflies here. There's lots of plantain, obviously. We've got some ragwort there. There's some hedging just along again. So we've got hazel and cherry plum and cherry. There's another alder there that's naturalised, and this great big cherry tree again has just found a way to our garden. So there's lots. I mean, the bees love the cherry blossom. So lots happening there. And again, this is a sort of mix of planted and just natural wildflowers. So just sort of trying to sort of nudge around the edges. Lots of clover. There's some vetch there. Sort of sorrel and lots of different plants just kind of packed into a small space. But again, sort of water lily in the pond, and there's some marsh marigold and some yellow flag and things. And there's a red damselfly. So just enjoying the pond. So they we do see them ovipositing in the pond in the summer. I see them very regularly actually. Just making the most of the space really. And just to show you, so there's a horse chestnut. We've got obviously the water butts as well, which are very important, especially in the dry summer. So just gathering rainwater there for using in the garden really, and we do use sort of grey water from the house where possible as well. So it's fair to say that this style of garden, where it's really very wild, is possibly not everybody's cup of tea, but there are ways that you can sort of shape it more to your liking. So just by providing elements like this path here, possibly just mowing edges so that there's sort of really clearer boundaries, creating shapes so that it's really clear, it's not just been left to go completely rampant. Those things can really help. The thing I found actually is that lots of the shop bought plants, even the sort of plants of pollinators, sometimes don't do so well, is the first thing. So it's a bit hit and miss. You can spend quite a lot of money and then find that those plants don't really want to be in the garden anyway. But the other thing about them is that I tend to find the plants that the bees are really interested in are very often the things like the green alkanet, so the plants that seem to do the most for wildlife are very often the ones that you might think are weeds, but actually these are the plants that they've evolved with. These are the plants that they're finding in the spaces around here, the wild spaces. So these are species that have evolved together. They fit together. So I mean, obviously the red campion, actually I didn't, that has grown from seed that we've sown, and that does very well. So there are, the sort of native wildflowers do reasonably well. It's a bit of an experiment to see which ones will take to the garden environment, and the fact we've got green alkanet apparently is a sign that the soil doesn't have a very high, at least at the sort of top level, the soil doesn't have a very high nutrient level. So we haven't used chemicals on this garden at all. I haven't been doing any fertilising or any of those sorts of things. We occasionally use compost for the pots and what have you, but over the years the nutrient level will have diminished, and so the wildflowers tend not to like high nutrient levels, which can be an issue in gardens. And so we don't really have that problem, but the grass is very dominant, and so these plants have to kind of either we have to work to make the grass less dominant, and unfortunately the yellow rattle, which can help with that, seems to be a favourite food of someone in our garden, so that hasn't worked terribly well. But we either have to make the grass less dominant, or you have to choose plants that can hold their own with the grass, really. But for us, it's been a bit of an experiment on that basis, and just learning which plants like to be here, which I guess is the same with any gardening, really. And learning which plants are favourites with the local wildlife. So that's really a key point. Is actually one of the things I really, really strongly urge people to do is to actually go out locally and see what's growing wild in the nearby area and what animals are benefiting from it, and then basically to replicate that as far as possible in the garden, because you're then kind of increasing existing habitat rather than kind of creating a rather strange niche. I mean, it's not perfect, because a garden's not the same as local woodland or sort of river edge and so on. Is a bit of a unique one, but you can certainly capture elements of it. So the green alkanet is a good example of that, of a plant which you find in the nearby space that will equally grow in a garden. And obviously, these plants that nature's sown have come from somewhere nearby. So that makes sense. But red campion's one that I find locally, so that has done very well here. I mean, obviously as well, it tells you hopefully what does well with your soil type and your local climate and things, so you aren't opting for plants which are going to struggle. It's really very much the right plant in the right place. So yes, I hope there was something useful in that, and just seeing what we've done. It's been a work in progress since 2020, at a much more kind of focused wildlife gardening level. But so we had really pretty quick results, and I hope that I can do some more videos through the year so that you can see the other stars of the show as the season evolves.